mission, should you choose to accept it.
It's a quest. It's a quest for fun.
Well, The Rock says, why don't we just cut right to the chase?
Okay, now he wants to get together. Well, he wants to talk.
I want you to do me a favor. I want you to tell all your friends about me.
It's showtime, folks!
What are you? I'm...
Greetings and salutations. Welcome to And I Quote, the weekly show where we introduce you to content creators of all shapes and sizes, joining us from any and all corners of the nerd universe. I am your host, Ryan of Nerd Culture, and our guest on this episode is comic book writer extraordinaire, joining us all the way from Australia. The Morgan Quaid is in the building. Morgan, welcome to the program. How are you?
Hey, how you going, Ryan? Thanks for having me. Feels good to be here. I'm going well.
Excellent. Thank you so much for being with us. We do appreciate it. So to kick things off, how were you introduced to the world of comics? What were some of the first comics you ever read or growing up?
See, this is the thing. I came into comics really late. I didn't... comics confused me when I was younger because there was cool artwork to look at and lots of words, and I was always a bit confused about which one do you do first, and my brain kind of didn't like the, jumping from one to the other. So I didn't really get into comics. I was never into Marvel or DC or any of the big ones back then. Never into superhero sort of comics. Garfield, those sort of, comic strip sort of things were as close as I got when I was, really young. So it wasn't until later. It wasn't until I was a fine adult, the man that you see before you, that I started to, actually get involved in comics. Which is a bit weird for this sort of thing, but it's the truth. That's what happened. Or didn't happen.
It's okay. We appreciate the honesty. You're definitely throwing me and probably the person who is watching or even listening to this episode a bit for a loop. Comics this late in the game? What are you doing with yourself? But it's okay. There's no right or wrong answer to this question because however you jump into comics, that's up to you. It's your decision. We're not going to force you to do it either earlier or later than you want to. It's your call. But what would you say were some of your maybe favorite comic book based movies or TV series growing up or some of today?
Yeah. Okay. So, well, obviously I'm a big fan of the MCU and Marvel stuff. Just because even before I got into comics and all that sort of stuff, they're just well done and they're, enjoyable and all the rest of it. Great characters. I've never really been big on the superhero side of things. So again, apologies to everyone. But that's never really appealed to me that much because I think it's been so done and there's so many different variations of it. And that's part of the reason I think why I wasn't, sort of drawn into, DC or Marvel earlier. But I've always loved those sort of movies and I'll watch anything with a remotely sci-fi fantasy sort of vibe. I'll watch it. It doesn't matter how bad it is, how good it is. There's always some good idea in there. There's always some cool thing that you can grab and think that's awesome. Even if the rest of it is trash, that idea is great, or that actor was fantastic, or, something like that. The one that I struggled with in the 90s in particular were the Batman movies. How there was that period, where they just went through a series of different Batmans, different actors and all that sort of stuff. I actually loved Keaton. I thought he did a really, really good job, but it was so, and this is the tone and I get it and all that sort of stuff, but it just felt so overdone and so corny which, that's the original Batman TV series, all over for sure. But I don't know. It wasn't until the more recent versions came out that I started to think, oh, wow, this is really good stuff. And you can tell a really detailed, chunky story instead of, Mr. Freeze or whatever Arnold was doing,
I don't think anybody knows what Arnold was doing, much less comic book movie fans or comic book fans in general, because that film, Batman and Robin 1987, we don't talk about it.
It wasn't good.
It's that bad.
It wasn't good. And what do I tell my son? I take him through the history of sort of geeky movies, and then you get to this period. He lasted 5 minutes, and I'm not going to watch that. And of course you're not. Why would you? Let's go into something else.
Yeah. He wants to hear a man use ice puns every 5 seconds and get paid mad money to use those puns too during the course of the making of that film.
It's Ice to Meet You. Yeah, was the one that I'm sure he used that one. I'm sure. I don't even know anymore. Very punny. Very punny.
Yeah, my condition is to be cold to your pleas of mercy. Just no.
And this is the problem. They get stuck in your brain,
Yeah,
and you can't
cool
get rid of these
party.
horrible, horrible things.
Yeah,
Yeah. You know, some movies are bad and they're fun to watch because they're bad. And then there's other
it's the
movies
expression that it's so bad that it's good.
Yeah. Yeah. Whereas I think
Some
they were
people
just
use that expression about Batman and Robin. They know it's bad, but they can't help but watch it and be entertained because it's so much fun. To some people, not to everyone, but to some people.
Yeah, and that's fair enough. To each their own.
Yeah.
But to not me for those ones.
Nah.
But
No,
again, I've watched them all because
there you go.
There's always something. There's always something you can get. I just may not watch them again.
No. Some of the earlier films or earlier iterations of certain characters, such as it transferred over from Tim Burton to Joel Schumacher. Now, granted, I like the first one, Batman '89 with Keaton as Killer. I still love that film to this day. I actually like Batman Forever. I think that has some good quality to it. It isn't the best. Still, '89 is still ranked above that, but to me, in my opinion, Batman Returns from '92 is a Tim Burton film, not a Batman film. And then Batman and Robin, we don't even talk about that. But no, never happened. It never happened. No.
That's fair enough.
I don't care how many people make arguments for that movie. I'm like, I don't get you. I don't get it. But listen, if you like it and you enjoy it, hey,
that's great.
You go ahead and live in that world. I'm gonna stand over here with the Batman 1989 fans. Exactly. You ever dance with the devil in the pale moonlight? Never rub into the man's bar. I mean, come on. It's iconic. It really. And that Batmobile, that is a beautiful car. 89's Batmobile, whew, that's a nice looking car. If I'm going to drive anyone's car, I want to drive that. I
mean, I don't want to, at my age, get into it or out of it. I don't want any cameras around while I'm doing that. But get me in there. That's fine. Just don't shoot while I'm.
No, I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that you would want to take it for a spin. Just take it for a drive for a little while.
Absolutely. And let me blow some stuff up. Not everything, but just a couple. Find some baddies, stick them in front of some boxes, and let me blow some stuff up. That's what I want to. And a grappling hook, at least one grappling hook.
I remember
something.
That's a valid point. It's a valid point. Once again, we're talking about the incredible, I should say, Morgan Quaid, comic writer here on And I Quote. Make sure you're sharing this video with all 200 of your closest friends because they're going to like the way they look after watching this video. I guarantee it. So you mentioned certain iterations of Batman, whether it's the earlier versions, whether it's later versions, the Chris Nolan trilogy. You have the new one that's out now. I haven't seen it yet with Robert Pattinson. I can't say anything about it. The Batman. But look forward to seeing it when I have the opportunity. I'm not going to give away anything in the realms of spoilers because I haven't seen it and I choose not to be spoiled. So let's not get into that. But any other comic book character-based films stand out to you aside from Batman? Any of the others that stand out that says to you, oh, I would put this one in my top 5, or maybe I would put this in my top 10?
Not when I was younger, but the more modern iterations I've really enjoyed. Because even the early Supermans and all that, and the early Spider-Mans.
Spider-Men?
Spider-Men.
There's how many Spider-Men have there been? Like 30 of them in like 10 years?
There have been many Spider-Men and many Batmen. There have been a lot of men of different varieties.
Wearing different capes and cowls and suits. Let's just put it that way.
That's exactly right. And again, I really struggled. I've never had a deep interest with those sorts of stories. And because they've just been so overdone, and none of the Supermen really spoke to me on any level. The new one,
Henry Cavill.
Yep, his stuff is great. I mean, he looks like a blooming superhero physically, and he has a chiseled face and all that sort of stuff. And I think he does really well. And so some of those new ones are good. The only so I'm a really big fan of the little bits in between. I love sci-fi. I love that sort of stuff. So my favorite thing about the first of the new Superman movies,
Man of Steel,
was all the stuff that happened back in the
in Krypton,
the original in Krypton. Yeah, all of that stuff and the little slices of that sort of history of that world and everything.
The
stuff
council,
you don't see
the
much
mythology.
of. Yeah, I love that stuff. That stuff is just fan, and it just and the S is not an S; it's the symbol of the house and all that sort of stuff. All that really, which is probably killing comic book fans everywhere because I don't know if that's a real thing. I'm guessing they just added that on to it's not an S. Of course, it was an S. You're telling me that the Superman with it? Surely it was an S. Am I wrong?
But on my world, it means hope. Well, here it's an S.
Yeah,
Why
here
don't we
it's an
just call
S.
you? The
you're
way they
Superman.
incorporated that was some clever stuff. Listen, I'll be the first to admit, I saw that movie Man of Steel from 2013, which I can't believe turns 10 years young next year. That's just nuts.
Wow.
That movie, I saw it 5 times in the theater because I loved it, because it was different. It was so different from other iterations of the character. And I was a Superman fan for a while, but when that movie came out, I thought to myself, this is a different version. This is, they're taking it a little bit more seriously. They're not, having him saving cats out of a tree like Christopher Reeve did. This is a completely new iteration, and they're making it their own vision. And I respect Zack Snyder and his creative team for doing that. Because listen, I think sometimes we forget that you have to separate comic books from movies. They are 2 very different mediums, and they're not going to line up with each other. They're never going to, because you could say, well, why wasn't Superman like this in the film directed by Zack Snyder? Well, that's because he took certain pieces of the Superman mythology and put them into the movie, but he didn't exactly take it shot for shot, word for word, copy for copy, because that doesn't really allow a director, if you will, to put together his own vision. If someone wants to tell a story, let them tell the story that they want to tell. Don't let the big studio bigwigs hover over them and says, well, it has to be this way, or it has to be like this, or it has to be, you know what I'm saying here, Morgan? You got to let someone tell the story that they want to tell. And for me, listen, I wasn't really a big Zack Snyder fan going into it, but then when Man of Steel was over, I was applauding. I was losing my mind. I was like, that is a Superman I want to watch more sequels of. I want to see where this guy, and Henry Cavill just nails it. He nails it so well. I want to see where this young buck is going to go. And unfortunately, due to creative differences and situations that were beyond our control behind the scenes, behind closed doors, he didn't really get a really clear, good shot at playing Superman. He was shoved into the DCU. They brought together the DCU too quickly. They rushed everything. You can tell, right? You can just tell right off the bat. They're trying to catch up with Marvel. It wasn't the best strategy. I wanted a Superman trilogy, but unfortunately, we never got it. Now, someone says, well, actually, Superman did have his own trilogy, because you had Man of Steel, you had BVS, and then you have Zack Snyder's Justice League. And I'm thinking, no. Those are team-up movies. Those aren't solo films specifically focusing on Superman, okay? That doesn't count. It doesn't count. Unless my boy, that's right, my boy, Henry Cavill gets a trilogy, I won't be fully satisfied. Unfortunately, I don't think it's ever going to happen. But then again, stranger things have happened in Hollywood, Morgan.
You never know. They might come back. I have 2 issues with that film and with all of the films since then.
It's okay.
And they're not big plot issues or character issues or any of that sort of stuff. I thought that stuff was great. My only issue is when the fight starts right towards the end, and you have the villain and the hero and they're fighting and lots of stuff. The problem is it just escalates to the point where now you're fighting on a satellite, and then you're fighting, you're going to be throwing planets around. It gets to the point where, okay, I have to top the last movie, so it's got to be more extreme. And then it just becomes, which, I mean, that in the comic world, that's the same thing as well. So I have a problem with that, where it takes it too far. The other thing is there's emotional loss. There's all of that sort of stuff. And this is my own lack of knowledge, sort of speaking here as well. This may exist. What I would love to see, and what I like about heroic characters, particularly when they're like Superman, they're incredibly powerful. They've got all this stuff. Permanent loss. Lose an arm, lose a leg, lose something vital that you don't get back, that forever changes you, not just the scarring of, Uncle Ben or whoever dying. Or,
Uncle Ben and Spider-Man,
Yeah. I want one of those heroes to lose something, and to be, how do I deal with that loss?
That's a good point.
Which, that's probably going to upset the comic book fans as well. But,
It's okay. There have been different situations where certain characters have lost loved ones in certain issues of comics, or certain storylines that take place within the comics. But again, once that run is over and a new creative team comes on board, they just retcon and reboot the whole thing.
Yeah.
So it's kind of saying, well, why did we just waste all that time for? What are you doing to me? If someone is going to be dead, make sure they stay dead, please.
I mean,
you got to have stakes. You got to have stakes.
But there are ways to bring them back. But if you bring them back, they better be a zombie or some sort of, there's got to be something wrong, spirit sort of thing. And,
There have been zombie issues of comics in the past. Marvel's What If or Marvel Zombies, those have happened.
Yeah.
I haven't read them though. I just know that they're out there because the Funko Pops that people shove on the internet. Everyone has been posting the What If Pops or the Marvel Zombie Pops. I have a friend of mine who's like really big into that, and I'm thinking, why would I want to see Captain America as a zombie? I don't get it. It's not for me. I know it. It floats the boat of maybe another comic book fan, but for me, I just don't care. That's just me. I don't mean to get into a whole tangent here. Jeez. But anywho, what am I trying to say here? So, all right, so you threw out some names, you threw out some characters and all that jazz. But now I got to ask one of the bigger things here. When did you specifically decide to become a comic writer? How did that start?
With a failed writing career. So I started writing novels years and years ago, and thinking it's a pretty straight trajectory. I know how this works. I'll write a novel. I'll get a literary agent. I'll get signed to one of the massive publishers, and then it'll be just sweet from then on. And as anyone who's tried to do that knows, that is not the way it works. Or very, very rarely does it work that way. So, 7 or 8 years in, I've written 4 or 5 novels. I'm struggling to try and get noticed, and then realizing, wow, going the traditional way is just not a viable option, potentially, blah, blah, all that sort of stuff. So I think it was about 7 years ago. I'm in the middle of that thing. I'm still writing. I'm on my 7th novel, I think, but I'm, still struggling with the whole thing. Walked into a comic book shop in Brisbane, and I'd never picked up a comic for years and years and years. Walked in and saw, I think it was the Image line, and Chew, I think, was my first comic that I picked up, and just started leafing through it and thought, what the hell has happened, and why have I not been here for this, and where did this all go? And so I literally walked out with I had to go and get some bags, bring them back, and then I walked out with 2 stacks of books, and not single issues either, the collected versions. And then just started reading everything I could, particularly if you call them indie, the Image, Dark Horse, the sort of less, not the big two, and was just fascinated by how people are telling these in-depth stories, horror, any sort of genre imaginable, but via this medium, which is, it's not film, but it's like a close cousin, and it's close enough that I can sort of see it happening as if I'm reading a film, which is immediately appealing. So then I went home, and then a month later, I started writing my first comic script and thought, I've got to start doing this. This is amazing. However I can do this, I need to be doing this, because I should have been doing this for the last 10 years instead of trying to write novels. And that's how it started.
That is truly, truly amazing. Thank you so much for sharing that with us. Once again, we're talking with Morgan Quaid here on And I Quote. Make sure you're sharing this video with all 400 of your closest friends, because you're going to like the way they look after watching this video, and subscribing to our channel for more great content. I guarantee it. So what would you say are some of the rewards about being a comic writer? What do you think?
One of the rewards is the immediacy of seeing something that you've written come back to you in a visual format. Because one of the issues with writing a novel, it's a very solitary affair for a start. So most of the time you're just writing alone.
Right.
You're dealing with the way I think about writing novels in particular is you spend the first half of the novel creating huge problems for the protagonist, and then you spend the second half of the novel trying to solve those problems in some necessarily viable way, but at the end, so that they're kind of solved, but there's enough to push towards the next novel, or there's enough undone, and all that sort of stuff. So you create all these problems, then but you're doing all of that alone. You might have someone you're bouncing off, or a reading group or something like that, but most of that you're doing solo. Whereas as soon as you're, as a writer, dealing with working with an artist, then all of a sudden you're handing over a script. They're sending sketches initially, and then, pencils, pens, all that sort of stuff, inks. So you're starting to see your characters come to life. You might have a rough idea of what they look like and I tell you what, bar none, every single comic I've worked on, the artist has represented the characters in a slightly different way than the way I would have, and much better. So I end up obviously going with what they're doing, because that's what they do. So there's that sense of being able to see a visual representation of what you're drawing, and you see the characters moving. Like you always imagine that, but seeing them moving and interacting, and these moments of crisis and all the rest of it, it's such a good thing. So I love that immediacy of it. I also like the idea, series are problematic because they obviously go on and on. But I like the idea that you can finish a book and it's done. And on the writing side, 10,000 words, something like that. Whereas if you're writing a novel, 90,000 plus, many edits, many sets of eyes just to get it so that you haven't got spelling issues and grammatical issues, and which is just soul destroying as a writer to have to go back and do all of that sort of stuff. Whereas with a script, it's so much shorter, and you're thinking about each moment on the page, each panel, who's moving where, who's doing what's the splash page going to look like, all of that sort of stuff. So it's much more like you're directing a film, a short film or something like that, rather than I'm writing a lengthy novel, and I'm, and that's really exciting and really different if you're not used to it as well. That was one of the things I really enjoyed. Just I mean, half the time I'll change the text and the dialogue during the lettering phase because it doesn't work. It's too long, or even that word's a bit clunky, or you know what? I want these two words to rhyme, or visually that word is too long because it's next to this dude's head. So I need to halve it, which is not something you would ever do in a novel. But it's this new dynamic where I need to see this word visually as well as, which is anyway, really cool. It's cool. It's cool, man. Yeah. It's just really cool.
That might be the word of the week here. Cool. Everything's cool. So that's whatever works for you. It's fine. On the other side of the fence, though, what would you say are some of the biggest challenges about being a comic book writer?
Money is the biggest one, because you have to pay for the artwork, and I don't go into deals with artists where let's do it together and then you'll get a share of the profits, because there may not be any profits. So I want to pay an artist up front for everything, which means I've got to foot the bill for that up front. That's the biggest, because with a novel, it's time. There's still, you usually have to pay for an editor or 2 or 3 editors, to be honest. So there is a certain amount of money, but it's nowhere near what you have to pay in terms of the artwork. And the thing is, you want good artwork, so you pay for it, but you can see the amount of effort. It takes these guys, sometimes 2 days for one page, because it's so detailed and there's so much work, and they have to, put all this effort into it. So the cost is a big one, that particularly if you need to recoup that, because already you're starting behind the front line. So you're already, you've got to recoup whatever you've spent. And for most comic creators, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, depending on the size of the issue, for artwork. That's if, in my case, I do the lettering myself. I do, a lot of the other stuff myself. If you're hiring a separate, someone to do pencils, inks, colors, and then a letterer, that's 4 individuals you're paying separate amounts of money to get this thing together, which is it's great, but it's costly. And then the other thing is, I would normally say the time, because it does take time to get this done. Honestly, coming from a writing background, it'll take me 2 months if I'm at a cracking pace to write a 90,000 word novel. Mm-hmm. And that's if every day I'm getting in and pushing it out. And that's first draft. And then, that's the first draft is horrible. You then need to do a second draft. Then you need to get it edited. Then you do another, so it takes 6 months to get a book. Whereas a comic you can get done, so I won't really complain about the time. It's more the money. It's the money and the investment. And then am I just doing this for the love of it? So I'll just pay that amount of money and who cares? I just want to get it out there. Or am I wanting to build a life as a comic writer? So therefore I need to find a way to recoup my money every time and potentially get a bit more so that I can get ahead of the game for the next comic and all of that sort of stuff. Yeah, the money comes down to money.
Comes down to money. Yeah, you got to spend money if you want to make money. Yeah, but you got to make it to spend it, brother.
That's right.
Kind of goes both ways. You know what I mean? And I heard that, and it's a funny thing because I heard that in a movie. So it's funny the things you learn from movies these days. I'm telling you, it's
good education. Good education.
To a certain degree, it is. I'll grant you that. Now, something you've been working on here most recently. I want to bring this up, and for those of you who may be watching or if you're listening to this, let's talk about something known as Shadow's Daughter for a minute here. My goodness, this looks really badass, if you don't mind me saying so. But what exactly is Shadow's Daughter, and how did you come up with this story? How did this all come about?
Right. So Shadow's Daughter is a comic series based off a novel that I wrote years and years and years ago. And the novel came from a very practical origin. I basically said, I'm never going to write anything about vampires or werewolves or any of that junk, because at the time, a certain vampire franchise was very big, and I was just so sick of vampires and, you know, the whole thing. And it's just been done so many times by so many different people. So I said, I'm not going to do it. And then, you know, a year later, I thought, well, come on, you're not much of a writer if you're not challenging yourself. By the way, with my accent, if I say writer, I actually mean writer. I just don't pronounce my T's. It's part of the Australian thing. So apologies for anyone that thinks I'm talking about a writer. It's a writer, but I'll try to enunciate a little clearer. Yeah, so I decided, look, you need to stretch yourself. So write a book about the thing that you don't want to write about. So I started writing about vampires, urban fantasy sort of world. You know, I called them different things and all the rest of that. And that's where this idea came from, of these individuals who have these abilities. Some of them are sort of, you know, more vampire sort of people. Some of them are what's called mancers, which are sorcerers. You know, they have some latent ability that comes out. And the person on the front cover here is named Summer, and her ability is that she can bend shadow to her will. So she's a shadow mancer, which is an incredibly rare talent that only, you know, there's only been two that people have known out. There's only two in sort of public memory that people remember. There's her, and then there is a serial killer that lived, you know, a little while before her. So it's very rare, and it brings a lot of fear when people see her ability. Where that all comes from is essentially going back a little in the history of the story. A red moon rises, or a demon moon rises at a point, and it just hangs in the sky for a period of a few months. And while that is up there, all of these preternatural abilities within a certain portion of the population start to come out. So latent vampirism starts to come out, and, you know, werewolf sort of stuff, and, you know, all these sort of things. And people with this mancer ability, it starts to come out. And then from then on, the world is completely changed. So it's a world like ours, but where 2% of the population have these gifts and abilities. So the world has to kind of deal with what that looks like. And Summer is one of those people, but she's also a bounty hunter for the Bureau of Preternatural Investigation. So she essentially hunts down rogue, what they call remade, who are these individuals that have, you know, so anyone that does bad stuff, she hunts them down. But she hunts them down for a very, very important purpose, which is money. She's just very practical. I need to pay rent. This is my job. So that's what I do. And that's where the story sort of starts, with her as this very powerful bounty hunter. And the main story is about her getting wrapped up into a case, because she's hunting down different people. She gets caught in this case, and what happens when she's faced with the possibility that all of her power is gone, and how does she cope with that, and what happens. That's, in a nutshell, a very large nutshell. That's kind of what it looks like.
That's okay. That's okay. And another image we have here from Shadow's daughter. Who are these individuals that are being shown here?
Yeah. Okay. So the two ladies are Summer in different issues. The guy with the sort of bandolier and the weirdly formal coat, he's Cal Manus is his name, and he's a blood mancer. So in one of the issues, he's a character that she's sent to hunt down, and he has a gun that fires leeches that can suck the blood, obviously, which is what leeches do. But he uses the blood because he's a blood mancer. He uses blood to do sort of magical, bad, icky stuff, and she's sent to hunt him down. The other guy, the guy with the cool flat top and the big mo, his name is Minky, and he's kind of a father figure to Summer. He's one of the only people that she will allow to sort of hug her, and he shows her affection. He's a tinkerer, so he kind of builds objects for people that are remade to use, because when they tend to use phones and those sorts of things, they fizzle out because of their ability. So he kind of tweaks them and sells them. He's also an arms dealer, but that's kind of underneath Summer isn't really aware of that as that's going on. And he's just a, happy kind of friendly guy. He doesn't have any special abilities other than being good with machines and stuff. But yeah, she absolutely adores him. She actually met him. She broke open the door to his shop and went in and threatened to rip his head off, basically, because he was harboring someone that was selling etheric laced drugs. So drugs with a sort of supernatural ability. It turns out he didn't know anything about it. He was innocent, but that's how they met, and then a friendship sort of went from there. So that's Minky. He's a bit of a crowd favorite. That guy. People tend to really like old Minky.
I gotcha. Wow, my goodness gracious. All these characters play very important roles in Shadow's Daughter. Congratulations on that series. That sounds amazing. A lot of different elements are thrown into the mix for good measure. So that's going to be fun for readers to digest. No puns intended.
Indeed.
See what I did? Yeah.
That's all right.
There you go.
That's all right.
There you go. Once again, we're talking with comic writer Morgan Quaid here on And I Quote. Make sure you're sharing this video with all 700 of your closest friends. You're going to like the way they look after watching this video and subscribing to this channel for more great content. I guarantee it. Shadow's Daughter, someone carrying a sword, using the shadow to her will. Goodness gracious, that sounds like an action sci-fi kind of animated series on Netflix waiting to happen.
Yeah, man. Fingers crossed. Come on, Netflix.
Yeah,
let's get it done.
Pick up the series. I think it'd be kind of cool. It'd be different. It'd be outside of the box here, and I'm all for people thinking creatively and outside the box. There's no qualms about it. So, have there been any special memories for you from being at conventions or other events, whether you're there selling your books or comics, or whether you're there as an attendee?
Well, look, I've come fairly late to this, so I haven't been to a lot, and I haven't. I was going to set up my first table at a con just when the pandemic hit, so I haven't been back to one since then. So hopefully next year I'll be doing that. But what I did like is so in Brisbane, where I'm from, I went to a con a couple of years ago before the pandemic, and I was struck by the artist sort of alleyway where all of the creators are sort of lined up. I was fearing that you will walk in and it will just be Star Wars and some more Star Wars and where to buy Star Wars merchandise and more. I was afraid that was going to be it, And yes, there was a fair bit of that there. But there was this whole section devoted to comic book artists, and that was amazing. Just to be able to meet them, talk to them, see what they've got on offer, and they're all, very, very different. So that's the bit that I've enjoyed so far, is just meeting other comic book creators, seeing what their process is, how they go about it, all that sort of stuff, and just learning as much as I can from those guys. That was really good, and I'm looking forward to doing that. And I'm looking forward to, at the moment, the only contact I've had with fans is through Kickstarter and Indiegogo. And that's really good because I can sort of stretch across the pond and talk to you guys in the US or, the UK or anywhere, which that I love, because again, writing novels, you don't get a lot of feedback. It's very rare. I mean, you might get reviews and a few things, but it's very rare to have people talking to you about this sort of stuff. So I find that those crowdfunding platforms are really, really good to interact with people and get a feel for what they're liking, what maybe they're not liking, what they're looking forward to, and just to interact with fans of the story and get great ideas and that sort of stuff. So I'm looking forward to doing that in person a bit more from next year onwards for sure, or maybe even later this year.
No, yeah, that would be great. I would like to hear stories about how you've been interacting with the fans at conventions or other events, selling your comics and whatnot, getting your name out there. But it's a good thing, you're able to communicate with your readers through Kickstarter and Indiegogo, because that's one of the better things about the interwebs. You're connected to the fans and what people's tastes are and what they're looking for. And if they love your stuff, they're going to plug it like nobody's business. And if they don't, hey, they can always move on to something else. It's all up to the individual. Everything is subjective. We've all known that hopefully since the beginning of time. And if you haven't learned it since the beginning of time, now you know. And it's okay. There's no shame in that. You learn something new every day in this world, and that's a great thing. There's nothing wrong with learning new skills to pay them bills. So
that's it.
If you know what I'm saying. But yeah, no, I wish you the best of luck, man. Seriously. If you get on the con circuit, it's great. I've been going to cons for almost a decade. It's a lot of fun. They are a lot of fun. You get to meet so many different people with so many creative ideas in artists alley or in the vendors area. So I'm telling you, some of the stuff I've bought, I've put up on my walls. I got some artwork, in portfolios, because there's so many great creators out there, and hashtag always support any creators. That's what I say.
Yeah.
So
yeah, 100%.
Got to give you credit for that. Who knows? Maybe Thor himself, Chris Hemsworth, will come by your booth and buy your comic.
Well, he is Australian, so
anything's possible, right?
You never know. Shout out to Chris if you're in the neighborhood.
There you go. There you go, man. Shout out to the god of thunder.
That's it.
Known as Chris Hemsworth, aka Thor. Really, yes, he's Chris, but anytime I see him, I just think, oh, it's Thor. He's on Earth this time. He's in Earth realm. What's up, man? How you doing?
That's why they had to do Ragnarok with the short hair, because otherwise you see him. Not that I see him walking around, but you see, on TV or pictures or whatever with the where's the hair? What?
Yeah.
Why aren't you where's the Thor hair? What happened? At least now you can say, well, it's post Ragnarok, so of course he's got shorter hair. That's okay. That's all right.
Yep. Post Ragnarok, post certain events that have transpired, and that's just the way it looks now. Incredible stuff, no question about it. Now, this episode is indeed powered by Poddex. Poddex are unique interview questions and episode starting prompts right in the palm of your very own hand. So whether you're a new podcaster or existing broadcaster looking to grow your audience or even get more engagement, you're going to want to check out poddex.com. Make sure you use the promo code NERDCULTURE, all one word, for 10% off your first order. You're not going to miss out on that opportunity. Let me tell you. So Morgan, if you had to teach a class on one thing, what would you teach?
Whoa.
Could be anything.
I do a lot of music, so the temptation is just to say on music. But I'll just say on music. There we go. I'll just say. I was going to say something else, but
No.
let music. How to be an awesome music dude and make it in the modern world in the music industry, being as scattered and strange as it is.
There you go. Music is the language of the soul, so there's nothing wrong with that. Good pick, my man. What's the worst job you've ever had?
It's definitely not the one I've got now.
I would hope not. I mean, you're writing all these creative things and putting these comics out to the masses. I think you'd be enjoying that by this point.
It is amazing. It is absolutely amazing. The
worst job you've ever had. What do you got?
Call center job. So I had a call center job on the phones for insurance, and it was the late night shift as well. So I think I start at 4 in the afternoon. I'm not wired that way. I can't. I'm an early morning person. I can't do that. So that was I'd have headaches every night, and just it's no kind of life to live. It wasn't for me. I did get a fair bit of writing done while I was on that job though. But apart from that, that was the worst. It was the worst. I think I wrote. Again, I said I would never do zombie books, but I think I started writing a zombie book about an office in a call center that gets taken over by zombies, just as some sort of catharsis of what I hoped would happen while I was enduring that job. Anyway, it didn't happen. I just left. I just went to a different job.
Just moved on to something else. Okay, fair enough. Yeah. Fair enough. You got to do what you got to do, man. You got to do what you got to do. What's one bad habit that you're trying to get rid of?
I mean, it's got to be food, right? I just eat too much. Just, sitting down too much, eating too much. Just got to eat less. Just eat less. Particularly as you get older, they reckon that's the way to go. Just eat less. They need, how everything's jumbo and you get jumbo size. They need like the opposite way as well, where you get a micro version of everything when you get to a certain age. There you go, sir. There's your drink. Enjoy. Because you'd feel like you get something. But, that wouldn't work. I just have 50 of those micro ones, and that wouldn't. Yeah, anyway. That old chestnut.
There you go. That's all's fair there. What are you currently curious about?
So if you look at my internet history, it is very not good because I'm writing a graphic novel at the moment, and a part of that graphic novel is around a staged suicide and a sort of magical realism thing that happens. Oh, right. So I'm learning a lot now about poisons and venom and that sort of stuff, which is very interesting, but not because I want to do anything with it, but just for a character and all that sort of stuff. So, kind of that. It's really weird. It's really weird. It's like a detective thing where she's trying to unravel what's going on, So there has to be a death initially. So all that macabre sort of death stuff is interesting at the moment. weird and gross. Also geopolitics, because of what's happening, with Ukraine and all that sort of stuff. That's I'm learning a lot about that, as I'm sure we all are as well. But yeah.
Sure. Yeah. Okay. That's understandable. Is there anyone you hope to meet or collaborate with somewhere down the line for future stories or future projects?
Yeah, definitely. Just anyone. Guillermo del Toro maybe would be good.
GDT.
So any of
there you go.
the weird ones, any of the weird directors, weird artists.
Tim Burton, maybe.
Tim Burton would be great. Yeah, that'd be great.
David Fincher.
Anyone like that. Anyone a little bit off kilter, a little bit strange, a little bit weird would be great.
Anyone a little bit off the beaten path. Well, Guillermo del Toro would certainly qualify. I mean, have you seen those Hellboys and Pan's Labyrinth movies? Gee whiz.
Yeah. I would like to meet him. I think. Yeah, my brain would work well with his stuff for sure.
What was one of his most recent projects? The Shape of Water. That was it.
Or Fish Love, as
some people have called it. Yes.
Yeah.
There's some other ones too. Yeah. But there you go. All right. GDT, maybe some Tim Burtons, maybe or maybe not David Fincher. I don't know.
For sure.
Depends. I don't know.
Yeah.
I know he's done
if the price is right.
If the price is right.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, I see what you did there. Maybe you'll win the Showcase Showdown one day if you ever show up on the Game Show Network.
Maybe. Was that an internal promo?
No. I'm just saying that hypothetically, if you were on a game show, you would want to win the Showcase Showdown on that said property, aka known as The Price is Right on the different network. But still, yeah. I digress. It's something we have here in the U.S. I'm sure there's different iterations of different game shows all around the world. I've seen them. So we'll just leave it at that. If anything's possible, let's just put it that way. We want to take this opportunity to thank Morgan Quaid for being our guest on this episode of And I Quote. We really appreciate it. Appreciate you being here. Appreciate you watching, or if you're listening to this episode. So Morgan Quaid, where can the person watching or listening to this find you online and everything you have coming up? What do you got?
Easiest place is the www.morganquaid.com, and everything's there. You can find me on social media, all of the social medias except the TikTok, because I'm old and I don't have time for that. But every other social media, you can find me on there. Get in touch by all means. The current Kickstarter will be ending shortly, but there'll be an Indiegogo campaign kicking off shortly after that, and I'll have details on that website. So head on over. Get involved. Happy to chat to people, answer questions, ask questions, all that sort of stuff. MorganQuaid.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for being here, Morgan. We do appreciate it. Once again, my name is Ryan of Neuroculture. You can find us on all forms of social media simply at It's Neuroculture. New videos go up on our YouTube channel each and every week. And I Quote is on Saturdays at 12 p.m. EST. And I got a couple of other shows I'm doing here and there, such as The Sideshow with Willow and Heather on Wednesday nights at 7 p.m. EST. That's on the HWWS Web TV YouTube channel and other social media channels there. So make sure you check that out. Also, this episode of And I Quote is brought to you by our good friends over at Rad Bear. You're looking for some killer-looking nerd swag, whether it's from Power Rangers, The Never-Ending Story, Star Wars, anime properties. You're going to want to check out the best nerd brand on the planet. Go to radbear.com. Make sure you use that promo code right there, NerdCulture10, all one word, NerdCulture10 for 10% off your order. You want to impress people, you want to have some killer looking swagger, you check out the radbear.com, for more awesome sauce and some killer looking swagger, if you know what I'm saying. Goodness gracious, that was a lot. I'm telling you, that was a lot. But in the meantime, for you who are watching, if you're listening to this, thanks so much for tuning in and being a part of this. We cannot do this without you. Don't forget to like, comment, share, subscribe, do all that stuff. We really appreciate it. And don't forget, stay healthy, stay strong, stay safe, and life is better when reading. And also, one of the things we're about to show you here in just a moment, this project is actually available on Indiegogo right now. Type in the words Jack Kirby. You will find it there. Speaking of comic books there, Morgan, the king of comics, Jack Kirby. It's a documentary book and DVD presented by Glenn B. Fleming. You're going to want to check that out. But as I said before, support indie creators of all shapes and sizes. And in case I don't see you, Good afternoon, good evening, and good night. Take a look.
Choose high-flying action. Choose death-defying escapes. Choose spine-tingling thrills. Choose nail-biting intrigue. Now's your chance to choose the adventure. The Captain Hawkland Adventures. Available on Amazon.com.
The original intention of the film was just for my personal use, but I thought, with it being such a unique thing, that I'd like to offer it to anybody who wants to see it. On the first visit, Jack took us into his another room, separate room, and there were these brown parcels full of artwork piled up, and he said to me, "You draw like I do." We were in the studio for 5 hours, it was fantastic. And there's this, he's got this desk, and everything he's ever drawn has come from this desk. And then I would just go with the flow, and that's what this film is about. It's just a unique film of him.
He says, "I beat you." He says, "They say we came in under the dead heat." He says, "That's not true because I beat you." And the American said, "Well," he says, "if you like to think so," he says, "but I know the real story." He says, I know I clearly won that one." See? Well, Joe is 6'3", and I was a runt, see, from the Lower East Side. And being Joe's partner was an advantage to me because Joe was believable, they would talk to Joe. The Goodman brothers would get to know him. Martin Goodman owned Marvel at that time. He went to his mother and he says, "Look, Jackie got a job drawing." He says, "They're paying him for it. They're paying him money for drawing." He says, "Suppose I go with Jackie." He says, he said, "They'll pay me money." He says, "I'll draw and they'll pay me money." He said, "I'll give the money to you," which we did. We gave it all to our mothers. They called me from Nassau. I lived in Long Island. And they say, "Would you like to come down and draw these guys in training?" I swear, this is not a story. And I said, "Yes, of course, I'd love to come down."